Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're listening or watching us. Thank you for making the sports and the world podcast part of your day. I'm Ladarius. Hope all of you are well and safe, and my friends and future friends. It's been a while. Um, I'll get to that at the end of the show. Brown's big picture. I'll talk about things that have been going on and things that I want to happen future with the show. We're going to talk a little Major League Baseball, talk a little wrestling, but I want to lead in with some WNBA. And for those who don't know, I'm repping my Seattle Storm shirt. Longtime fan. Shout out to Sue Bird getting a statue. Since she's been in the league, that's how long I've been a fan of this team. So shout out to her for getting a statue there in Seattle. But that's what we should be talking about. That should be kind of like the overall focal point of the conversation, right? You would think, right? But I want to talk about Caitlin Clark. I even want to talk about talk about Sophie Cunningham as well. So let's just jump into it. WNBA All-Star, the voting. Voting is a wrap. Caitlin Clark, most overall votes. And not to my surprise whatsoever, given her fan base and given things of that nature. But that's not the topic of conversation. So just like, whether it's NBA or any other all-star vote, like maybe, there's the fans, the medias, and then there's the players. So when let's look at Caitlin Clark. Now, when you look at her for the fans, obviously, top. Absolutely number one. 3 from the media and number 9 from the players. And that's the focal point of the conversation. And then you start hearing things like, oh, is she the 9th best? No. Here's the thing. And this is where I'm going to kind of leapfrog in, because as many of you, even if you're watching now, some of you may be new WNBA fans, some of you may never watch, and some of you may be like OGs like me. Been watching it, 20 plus years, almost near the inception of the league. The players' perception of Caitlin Clark is heavily based on 2 key factors. It's A, ironically, the media, and B, the fans. That's what I find. It's the other 75% that is why the players feel what they do. The 75% of the voting that comes from the 50% of the players and 25% from the media. It's from the media and it's from the fan and her fans. Let me be super clear. Her fans. And one of the things that has to be talked about is that it's like people think, oh well, she's not the 9th best guard in the league. Of course not. Of course she's not. But here's the thing: anytime you go on social media, it's her fans. It's her fans, and how do I know that? She led the All-Star voting. Okay, and now when I say, oh, she's 9th, oh, the players have a vendetta against her. No, here's what happened. Those players saw that, oh, Caitlin Clark is, she's the face of the league, and she's helping us do these great things. And it rubs players the wrong way, because especially veteran players, it rubs them the wrong way, because it's not like it rubs them the wrong way when, Caitlin Clark, and then people are saying about Caitlin Clark, oh, she's the face of the league. She's helping us get TV deals. All of that could be true, but it doesn't change the fact that the players, they really don't, some of them don't like her. We could argue some of her antics, but listen, am I saying Caitlin Clark is directly responsible? No, but this is what her fans have to understand. Understand why these players feel the way that they do. Because is she the face of the league? I think Asia Wilson might have something to say about that. Nafisa Collier may have something to say about that. Brianna Stewart may have something to say about that. Sabrina Ionescu may have something to say about that. But it's not saying that Caitlin Clark's not going to be a star in this league, and she's not, and it's not going to be an all-time great. I think her fans get wrapped up in thinking, oh, she's the 9th. Oh, the players don't think she's great. No, the players, listen, they're basically what you, the fans, her fans, and what the media have been saying about her. So it's not like it's a big shocking thing. It's like when I saw, oh, vote getter, not surprised. When I saw, I'm surprised, to be honest with you. She wasn't like double digits because we've seen how some of the players have responded to her and have spoken about her. We've seen it. And listen, Caitlin Clark, let me lay this out here. Caitlin Clark is a star. There's a reason why she was the number 1 overall pick in the draft. There's a reason why there's a reason why people think that she's going to be a great. Her rookie season was great. All assists. One of the greatest distributors of the basketball. She can shoot it out of the gym. I get it. But from the player's perspective, and this is what people understand, is that we have a hard time of placing ourselves in the position of the players. Because listen, the fans like her. The media likes her. The players are like, we're good. We're good. Why? Because they don't like if you say something about Caitlin Clark. And this comes more so from the fan side, which ironically makes up half the voting. That's why, I'm like this. I didn't even need to see the numbers to know that Caitlin Clark was going to lead the W in All-Star voting. Because when you said half, it's Caitlin Clark's going to lead it. She's going to lead the voting because she's that popular. Her fan base is massive. But her fan base they're not hardcore basketball fans. They follow Caitlin Clark. They're not focused on the game. And before I get any deeper, I see my guy here and it's my listen, it's my wise man, Craig. How are you? And by the way, if you go watch fantasy, go watch the Fantasy Cares, and with him and Joey Wright, like an amazing expert on Jurassic Park. If you need to know about Jurassic Park, talk to my wise man, and he'll school you. He's very fantastic in that. I had to put that out there for you, buddy. I love you. Now, to kind of put not say a button, but to kind of move the point along. Now, let's look at only 2 players finished in the top 5 in all 3 categories in terms of guards. I could have put in front court and then been Andrew. That's a different conversation for another day. Trust me. By the way, averaging a double-double, by the way. So when you look at only 2 players who finished in the top 5 in the fan, media, and player vote. One's a rookie, and one's arguably, you can make the strongest case, maybe the best point guard in the league. The rookie is Paige Beckers, and the guard is Sabrina Ionescu. Now, my buddy Tanya Ray Fox, who's a friend of the show, she went more in detail and showed the numbers from previous season where Sabrina Ionescu was. And I'm sitting there going, look how the league treated Sabrina Ionescu when she first came in the league. Like, go look at somebody like Asia Wilson. Like, the disrespect was real. For Caitlin Clark, just because she was 9th among players, that doesn't mean she's a terrible player. It's letting you know the players. Well, here's the thing. Here are the players that finished ahead of her in terms of ranking and when it comes to the player vote. Number 1, I'm glad she got Alicia Gray, who finished first not only in player but in media. Number 2 was Sabrina Ionescu, who also finished second in media. And number 3, Skylar Diggins of my beloved Seattle Storm, and she finished 4th in the media. The point is that the only players who basically were higher on this list was Kelsey Plum and Jackie Young. And also, Like that's just the guards. We're not talking about the front court. Those are the guards in terms of player. Those two were the only ones that were ranked lower than Caitlin Clark. A rookie and a veteran in Sabrina Ionescu, top 5 in both categories. I said, well, what's your point? My point has always been this. When we talk about Caitlin Clark and we have these conversations about Caitlin Clark, understand this. Her fan base, and if you're a fan, if you're listening, I sincerely hope you're listening. Because the problem is that when anybody says anything negative about Caitlin Clark, oh, it's disrespect. It's not. It's part of, listen, it comes with the territory. Sabrina Ionescu got it. Asia Wilson got it. A lot of these top stars in the W, they got it. Caitlin Clark right now is on a trajectory to be a star. Okay, you could argue she's borderline there. But her fan base has to understand that there's her fan base, and then there's people who watch the game and have seen this story played out all too often. And no one is disrespecting Caitlin Clark. But her fans will come after you. And people are like, well, Darius, listen, I cover, I work at Beyond Women's Sports, and we talk about the W. Shout out to everybody there, my co-workers there and colleagues. And in the times, they're like, well, why don't you talk about the W? Some of the fans, either like, to be honest, some of them, percentage of them that don't know ball, or like if I make a reference to Caitlin Clark, they see it as a sign of disrespect. Like, how dare you? I see what some of y'all put, like, people like, I had to tell somebody, yeah, Diana Taurasi's better than Caitlin Clark. Why are we having this conversation? Oh, well, with the games, and I'm like, okay. Yeah, now they play more games than when Diana first came to the league. Stats are going to be skewed, whatever, however. But don't sit up here and tell me that Caitlin Clark, after one season, she's better than Diana Taurasi, who's put up a Hall of Fame career. Okay, Hall of Fame career. We're talking about statues. Diana Taurasi might be in line to get a statue for the Phoenix Mercury, because like my girl Sue Bird, one city delivered multiple championships, arguably the face of the franchise for decades. And you're going to tell me that Caitlin Clark is on that trajectory. And I'm going to tell you this before we transition to talk about a little baseball or anything into the rest of the show. I want people to understand. I always welcome people who are willing, who don't understand the game or don't willing, listen, I'm no connoisseur. I've been watching the game, and there's still things I'm learning about the game. But don't put Caitlin Clark on a pedestal so high, because it's a deeper fall. And I want Caitlin Clark to succeed, because in essence, her success is tied to the league's success. Even with the expansion, which I'm going to get to, with the recent expansion news for Detroit, Cleveland, and Philly. Her success is tied to the league's success. Let's face the fact, in the NBA, MJ was successful, the league was successful. Like, when you look at, no matter Wayne Gretzky was hockey. He was hockey. He was the NHL. When you look at soccer, look at your Lionel Messi's, your Cristiano Ronaldo. Like, I can't believe we have the conversation when we talk about that. Like, I think Caitlin Clark is a great player, but listen, is she the? We're losing the plot. Where, listen, she's voted 9th. That's a reflection of her and the relationship with her peers. The media loves her and the fans love her. But some of y'all, not say some of y'all, her fans, choose to take it to a level it doesn't need to go to. And we got to tone that down. We got to bring that down a couple of decibels. And speaking of bringing things down a couple of decibels, folks, let's talk about her teammate. Let's stay in the great state of Indiana and talk about Sophie Cunningham. Now, I'm no big city lawyer. And, you know, have you ever had that moment where you say something and then immediately you're like, oh man, I shouldn't have said that? Yeah, that's Sophie Cunningham. And she tried to walk it back earlier today. So essentially what she said, I'm not going to go through the full transcript of what she said. But essentially, she talked about Detroit. She talked about Cleveland. And their fan base. And then earlier today, as we're speaking, she made a case for Nashville, not because of how it's a great basket. Tennessee is a fine basketball state. Listen, the Gator fan in me hates to admit that, but the way that, you know, great basketball, and then she made her case was Broadway. I haven't been. Listen, I need to travel, so I might head to Nashville at some point. But the point is this: Detroit and Cleveland defended themselves, as rightly so. And the fact of the matter is, we got to have a conversation. Because listen, back in the day, and this is where I'm showing my age, and probably those who are listening are going to probably show their age. So if I get exposed, you guys are getting exposed. The Detroit Shockers was a hell of a franchise. Detroit, well, you know, Detroit basket. To me, when I think of Detroit, that's a quintessential sports city. And they had the Pistons, they had the Red Wings, they had the Lions, but they had the Detroit Shock. And man, they were they were a hell of a franchise. And for have basketball to, I hope that they become, because I think somebody else owns the rights to the Detroit Shock name. But to go back to my point, and even when she talked about Cleveland, like Cleveland's a sports, like the Cleveland Rockers, like bringing back these franchises are fantastic. And before I get too deep, I apologize to you, John. John, what up, Tribal G? Listen, my guy. Thank you guys for listening and who are watching. I really do appreciate it. I was kind of Brown's big picture. I'll get to it towards the back end. But going back to my point, and then if that wasn't enough, she mentioned Nashville, which I think is a basketball. You know, they named, you know, after the Summit, after the late great Pat Summitt, who's just one of the greatest basketball coaches, men's or women's coach, in my opinion. And they made her, Broadway. Like, no, here's why Nashville's a great basketball city. I also I'm kind of pumping my stuff, so I apologize in advance. And, you know, I covered, you know, Athletes Unlimited basketball. I've been doing it for the last couple of seasons. And shout out to Penny. I said her name on the show. So for allowing me to cover the sport, because I love what I do. I'll put it that way. And they sell out there, the Nashville Auditorium. They sell out. It's fantastic. And I'm like, man, they really love their basketball. I can argue in Tennessee that basketball maybe kind of supersedes football, because if we want to go that route, Tennessee basketball has been more successful maybe the last 15, 20, you know, maybe like the 15, 20 years than Tennessee football. Don't look at me. Look at the Raptors. Don't blame me. Look at the Raptors. So, and then Craig makes a very good point. Expansion is hard. Even bigger, more money successfully is messed up. And that's true. And like Craig is absolutely right. But I take it back to this point. See, where Sophie Cunningham was coming from I don't think it was like she was quite, and that's fine. Do I think, man, we're adding team? We remember we got a team in Toronto coming next year, and we added the Golden State Valkyries this year. So if you look at it, between the Valkyries this year, the Tempo, and these teams, we're going to have at least 5 teams in the next 5 to 10 years. So it's hard, and we don't know what else is going to come after that. So Craig is absolutely right. It's hard, but if you do it right, like how Golden State's doing it, like expansion teams aren't supposed to be that good, and they're pretty good, and they've beaten pretty good teams, and they're sitting pretty good in the Western Conference. So I agree with you, Craig. Expansion is difficult. I say it's harder. Like baseball hasn't had expansion, and people can correct me in the chat. Because trust me, I think the last expansion was the Tampa Bay Rays and the Colorado Rockies, and that was over 20 years ago. So expansion is hard because you can have an oversaturation. So I'm not going to disagree with Craig. Craig's the wise man. He knows exactly what he's talking about. So. And so with that point, and then I see John jumping back in. I'll talk about Caitlin Clark. I think her ego's getting the best. Look, I can make that case too. I think she's buying into, as long as her talent meets her ego, she's going to be fine. Because the one example I use all the time is Terrell Owens. Why did teams tolerate Terrell Owens? Why did he go? His talent. It's his talent. They tolerated his talent. But when the talent bar got underneath the ego bar, who became more ego than talent, we're not interested. I'm not saying Caitlin Clark is there. So, and then thank you, Craig. The Diamondbacks, yeah, the 2000. It was around because they won the World Series 2001. Yeah. Thank you, Craig. I knew it was the Rays. Colorado came like early 90s, I believe. If you're in Arizona, I did not mean to forget the Diamondbacks because I remember that hit by Jay Bell. I apologize. And then 2002 for the Texans. So yeah, I knew because I was in high school. So I knew the Texans. I knew they were high school. So 2002. So that fits. So expansion is hard. And shout out to Craig once again. So I understand where Sophie's coming from, but understand that Detroit has the model. They were successful. And they're like I said, a quintessential sports town. So, and I think Cleveland has shown that, listen, they come out there and support their Cavs. And like Craig alluded to, and I'm not going to sit there and deny it, listen, expansion is hard, even for bigger cities. We've seen it happen. Like the Vancouver Grizzlies. Like 2 teams they were 2. It's like, well, it didn't quite work out in Vancouver, but they moved that bad boy down to Memphis and it worked. And Toronto is still working today. So, and then Craig, 2004. Yeah. And I think, and the one city that sticks out to me is Vegas. Because the A's are going to be moving to Vegas soon. I think they open ground on the stadium grounding or whatever. Vegas is going to, they already have the NFL team. They got the basketball team. They got the major league. They got the baseball team. The NBA team is next. And they got hockey. So Vegas is I think if I were to expand, it would be one of 2 places. It would be either Vegas or I'd go back to Seattle because the Supersonics were not terrible in Seattle. I mean, you want to talk about, like I say, I'm not saying because I'm a Storm fan, but the Key Arena, listen, you didn't have to be, but you can feel the excitement. And so hopefully they get a team as well. Like I said, because I think the NBA, if there was a sport I think is going to expand next, I think it's going to be the NBA. I think at some point, and I think Vegas and Seattle are definitely to me on the list for that. So speaking of expanding, once again, thank you guys. I see the numbers. I'm not gonna get emotional, but yeah, like I said, Browns Good Picture will cover a lot of my feelings and things of direction. But speaking of direction, let's come in. Let's talk about some wrestling. Now, let's talk about WWE. Like I said, they just had the PLE, the United Champions, over there in Riyadh, and it was quite the success. I think I'm not going to say it was a terrible card. I think you got a lot of takeaways out of it. But when we're looking ahead, and we're looking just in the next 2 weeks, we got the Great American Bash, and we got Saturday Night's Main Event coming up. Excuse me, next Friday. Is it? No. My math is terrible. Next Saturday, and then Evolution is that Sunday. So, but I want to share my thoughts because a friend of mine, like I said, by the way, if you want to drop questions on the show, you can drop them here in the chat. I'll be happy to answer them. Or go to my social media, go to @Ladairs_Brown on Twitter or TikTok, Ladairs_Brown on Instagram. If you drop a question there, I'll be more than happy to answer it. More than happy to, because it could be about sports. It can be something about pop culture. If I know about pop culture, I'll figure it out. But I do have questions. I do have questions about Love Island. So if you guys can help me out on Love Island, where's my camera? So help me out on Love Island, okay? I always never know what the camera is. I think I'm looking at the camera. So help me out there. And then, Craig, thank you. I think the songs are coming back. Yeah. Let me tell you something. And those jerseys, don't get me started. Those jerseys were great. And listen, you had Gary Payton, you had Sean Kemp, your boy Detlef Shrimp. I mean, Dale Ellis, we're throwing it back. Like that team, like, whoo. I mean, they just ran across the Bulls. I'm telling you, sometimes it's about luck and who you run across, especially in the playoffs. It's like, listen, some people have easier path than others. It's like if Chicago would have somehow lost the East, and then like it's a different conversation. But so, and then thank you, Craig, for the wrestling Slammiversary on the 20th. Please, I've been getting into a lot of TNA. No, it's total nonstop bad. People think TNA. People think, it's the soup. No, it's wrestling. And I listen. I think more people should watch TNA because they brought back the inspiration, aka the Iconics. You got like whatever Trick is doing. The belt is great. We're gonna get Trick. I think we're gonna get Trick and Joe Hendry at Slammiversary, I believe. We're gonna get that card's gonna be very good. And by the way, Wise Man, remind me if I forget to get TNA Plus. Remind me because I always forget. You're the reminder, Wise Man. You're the reminder. And then let's go back to my guy John. He said, Ladairs, bro, I think WWE is listening to me because I said Rock said we're going to lead her the Judgment Day. And they don't hit, but I was wrong about Penta joining the Judgment. Here's what's interesting. Oh, yes, they did add Mike Santana. Thank you. I thought on NXT. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Wise Man. We got to get the Wise Man on the show because he's kind of like the guy, listen, the brain's like, it's like a Rolodex. But his is like a filing cabinet, which is more of a suitable place to store. But anyway. Trigger, that's going to be a banger. That's going to be a great match right there. Now, going back to some things that I like, I did have a question, and one of the questions was asked. And like I said, you could drop questions on my social. And so I do want to answer that question. So I had a question from my buddy Berto. So Berto, if you're listening and or watching, I thank you so much for the question. And so the podcast question is, and I'll answer it. He said rather early, but will the current feuds have any implication with War Games in November? That is a very good question. Yes, when you think about November, we're thinking that's almost 4 months away. But I do believe that we're going to get Team Rollins and potentially maybe Team Punk. I think you could do I think Team Rollins is the team because you have Bronson Reed, you got Braun Breaker. They're going to get other dudes. I think more people, you can kind of round that out. Or it could be team. To me, team, you could. It's so hard. It's a great question, and like John, it could be team Cody versus team Cena. I think here's what I'll say. You can do team Cody, team Cena, team Rollins, or team Punk. I believe that we kind of saw team Cody, but I think if we get Roman Reigns return, because like I said, I think I don't know when they're filming Street Fighter or whenever, because I don't think he's going to be on the SummerSlam card. I don't think he's going to be there in August. But I think he'll be back I think he'll be back post SummerSlam. And we could see, or he'll be back at SummerSlam and help Cody. And so whoever Cody faces, potentially maybe Cena. I think you can get that. Now the question is, Team Cena is going to be interesting if you do Team Cena. I think you could go a lot of ways, because I think, see, the key things that I look out for, and the one thing I think, listen, the whole LA Knight dynamic with Punk and with Rollins, that little triumvirate there, that's something. That's something not to ignore. And then we got Craig saying team, yeah. Not like I need a Slim Jim now. But that's going to be very interesting to me. And yes, War Games is, I think when you have this time, all I know is that the people who should be involved is CM Punk, LA Knight, Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns, Cody Rhodes, in the faction with him, Bronson Reed, and Braun Breaker. That's who I feel should be involved. Like Team Cena, I'm curious to see who would you put on Team Cena. I'm not upset at it, but who would form Team Cena? Because I think he has a lot more enemies than he does friends. But I don't know. I'm just a guy. I'm just a guy thinking about opportunities and thinking about, I'm not a big fantasy booker, but I like to I have a couple of people who I want in the picture. But when I looking at, I want to talk about NXT, like the Great American Bash they got going. But Evolution, to me, I love women's wrestling. Those who know me, I did my final project at Full Sail University on women's wrestling. I interviewed some amazing people, including current TNA Women's Champion Masha Slamovich. I actually found the video of it, and maybe I'll show it. I'll ask Masha if she wants to be seen on there. Listen, my hair was a mess, and I didn't understand combing my hair before the interview, because I thought it would just be audio. I thought, and I said, oh crap, it's visual too. I forgot I did the video for the anyways, America. So kind of shifting gears to going back to Evolution, I'm liking the way the card is shaped. And what makes, here's the thing. And so far, I think the card's going to be more. I think we got the NXT Women's Championship match, JC Jane versus Jordan Grace. I think Jordan Grace gets the belt. Like I said, I'll probably write it, but I think there's a case to be made that Jordan Grace could win it. Because I think JC Jane, she got her built the championship, and it's a great story. It feels eerily similar to how, like, what they did with Jacob Fatu, giving the US title to Fatu and then him dropping it to Solo. Because, and there's no disrespect to JC or to Fatu, but it just feels like, okay, they may be back in the picture sooner rather than later. They got the Battle Royal for the championship to go to Clash of Paris. I want to see who's going to be in that Battle Royal. I'm very curious on that, because you're going to get, it's just not going to be NXT. Like I said, we've seen Evolve. If you watch on Wednesday, which I got to catch up on, like the Callie Armstrong, the Wendy Choo, we could see something there in that regard. And the women's tag team fatal 4-way. Listen, we might get Alexa Bliss and Charlotte Flair. Because remember, they've been teasing it. Now the Raw team is going to be interesting. The Raw team is going to be very, very interesting because the NXT team is, I think it's one of two. I think we either get Soruka and Zarya, or we get Izzy Dame, Tatum Paxley. I think we're going to get. It's going to be a surprising team, but I think those are the two front runner teams, in my opinion. And then, of course, we get Rhea and Io at Evolution. And, yeah, you see, here's the thing. I understand, but to me, who else is left for Rhea to face? And this is the question I always get when it comes to booking. It's like, yeah, do you want to see Rhea and Io? I just don't want it to end up being like a Roman and Lesnar situation, because at some point you're going to have fatigue just watching them compete. It's going to be absolute fatigue. And so we'll see. We'll see. I like the way the card is shaping out at Evolution. But listen, is Oba gonna drop the belt? I think Oba. I think at some point, me and C Double, we're gonna do a wrestling show and we'll do the predictions. I don't want to take away his thunder. Take away. We'll do a prediction show probably sometime next week. Next week about it, and we'll cover all the matches. And I'm also curious to see. Listen, this whole dynamic with my girl Becky Lynch, Wise Man Knows I Love Her, and Bayley and Lyra Valkyria. To me, this culminates to a situation where I think the end game is a triple threat match, potentially at SummerSlam. I think we get Becky versus Bayley versus Lyra. And you can make, and I think, I'm not going to fantasy book, but I think that's the end game. But you got to have matches in between. So there's a lot of stuff going on. Like I say, drop your questions. Because listen, because sometimes my brain, it just goes boom, 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 boom. And so I may forget something. But okay, let's see. John has a question here. I have a question. Could we get a stipulation to Charlotte versus Alexa if Charlotte loses? If Charlotte loses, could Alexa make Charlotte join the Y6? I wouldn't see. I can see Alexa. See, the thing that's interesting is Nikki Cross is already in the Y6. Now, if you want to expand it, like if Charlotte to Alexa, she has to join. Like I know what you mean, John. I apologize. Yeah. I wouldn't be upset. I think Charlotte at this point, figuring out what to do with Charlotte is very interesting. I think that you could, but me personally, I think I could see a way that Alexa gets in and maybe kind of plays mind games with Charlotte. And maybe that's how we get to the Y6. Like I don't hate the point. I like it because it's different from a creative perspective. I like to keep an open mind about that. So I think that's just something to kind of consider moving him. But I really, really, really do love that. Now, before we transition to the Browns big picture, I do want to talk a little baseball, a little MLB All-Star game. And listen, your Ohtani, Aaron Judge, listen, Cal Raleigh, big dumper, as the folks like to call, not surprised. But two players, to me, all the Cubs are in there. Shout out to Pete Crow Armstrong and shout out to Kyle Tucker. But I want to talk about Pete Crow Armstrong and another former Cub who made it to the All-Star game again, who's making history as the first player to be an All-Star in 3 different positions. And that's Javi Baez. Now, back in 2021, we made it, being a Cubs fan, we made a trade with the New York Mets. As part of that deal, we sent Javi to the Mets. And we got back in the deal some guy named Pete Crow Armstrong. And we didn't know he was going to be this good. And like I say, the Cubs farm system is one of the top 5 in all of baseball. I'm not saying it because I'm a fan. I'm saying it because we've seen guys come through this system and be great. Like Matt Shaw playing third. We're seeing the Nico Horners. We're seeing talent developing in there, the young talent, and the farm system and the coaching there really comes in handy there. But with Javi holds a special place in my heart because, listen, he struggled. Like he was batting close to the men. He hovered around the Mendoza line a lot. And I said, oh, man. And I was one of the guys like, oh, man, boo. I'll be the first person to admit it. And I had a special place for him, Anthony Rizzo, and for Chris Bryant. Like, those three dudes, they were a huge part of our success to get to the World Series, to win a World Series. And it's something you don't forget, especially with Riz and Chris Bryant, them being two to make the final play together, if I'm not mistaken, in Game 7. But Javi's a guy, I see him go to Detroit. Shout out to Haley, Haley Murphy's going to be on the show next week. I forgot to tell her I was doing a show today, but that's on me, America and the world. That's on me. But I seeing him succeed makes me smile. And sometimes, and it's going to kind of lead to the transition to the Browns' big picture. But Javi was just a good dude. So was Chris Bryant. So was Riz. And they're just good dudes. And before I go any deeper, I see John talks about Ronald Acuna should not be in the All-Star game. I'm an Acuna fan. Yeah. Listen, I didn't want to be the guy that, I understand it if it was not in Atlanta, because you got to have an Atlanta guy in there. You got to have a hometown player, I feel, at least one. But, like, you would think it was booked in Chicago or Detroit based on the results. But since it's in Atlanta, I think Acuna, listen, were there? Sure. But I get it. But I see your point as well, John. It's just sometimes numbers are great, but sometimes, oh man, we're in Atlanta. We got to put a guy in there. So I think that's essentially what happened in that respect. And let's see, you make another point, John. He said, look, there's a rumor on Twitter that they'll be looking to bring back the Iconic. If they do that, because listen, they got the partnership with TNA. The Iconics, to me, like, this is what gets me. Like, with these women's tag team, I said, man, had they kept the Iconics, and instead of trying to split them up and they were trying to make Peyton Royce, this, and then trying to make Jessica McKay this, and they were trying to make Peyton Royce and Billie Kay two separate things, and I'm like, oh no, just let them work great as a team. Like, some things work together. A peanut butter sandwich and a jelly sandwich sounds good on paper, but it sounds even better when you put them on the same sandwich. I'm just throwing that out there. And maybe it's not that I'm hungry. So but we're going to be almost done, folks. Thank you for indulging me for almost 45 minutes. But going back to Javi, I'm happy for him. Like I said, making history, making the All-Star team 3 times during the position. He was at infield with the second base, I believe, the first time, shortstop second time, and now the outfield. And making that transition to that, Javi could have said no, but Javi wanted to be a better player. And going to play the outfield, and as someone who played baseball growing up, listen, I played right field because I played first, but for a game I played right, and I interviewed all the outfielders. I'm like, man, these takes a lot. It takes a lot of energy to play the outfield, running the gaps, getting the ball in, knowing who to throw it to. It takes a lot of work and process. For the infield, where you're throwing, essentially, sometimes you may catch a fly ball on the back of the infield, but it's a transition in terms of your arm strength. It's a transition to your stamina. And Javi Baez has shown he's adjusted very well. And so that's why I'm very happy for him. Happy for my Cubs. Happy for, Sai Suzuki should have been an All-Star leading the league. I think he's leading the league in RBIs. But we're not going to get in that conversation. So it could have been all Cubs outfield. Just saying. But friends and future friends, we're coming to the end of the show. And once again, listen, drop your questions in the chat, or listen to this episode, every episode of the Sports in the World podcast, wherever you get your podcast. This episode will probably drop out because tomorrow is, if you're listening today, tomorrow will be 4th of July. So maybe it comes out Saturday. We'll see. But check out the social at Ladarius_Brown, Twitter and TikTok. There's _Brown on Instagram. You can follow Sports in the World on Facebook as well. So I'm working on that dynamic. I gave up on the Instagram page for the podcast. No idea what I'm doing. But speaking of that, let's go into Brown's big picture, and I want to get a little personal here, and I want to, if you'll indulge me for about 5 minutes or so. You know, I've always wanted to do, when I started doing this podcast back in May 2019, I believe, was my first episode. I did back in May 2019. I didn't know I had a vision for the show, what I wanted to do, because I want to talk about things in the sports and things in the world. And I feel like sometimes I stray away, focus on the sports, but sometimes sports integrates with the world so well, or sometimes it made it easier to me, because sports is a ultimate uniter to me, and that was kind of my intention. In all honesty, that was definitely my intention and what I wanted to do. And sometimes I got lost in the shuffle. Life happens. There was a mental thing, I went through a depression. I started questioning myself, and then, dealing with my mom, my family is important, especially when you have older parents. And my focus went there. But I do this because, for two reasons. First and foremost, I love talking about sports. I love talking about any topic, anything I have a little bit of knowledge of, because there's the old quote where know something about everything and know everything about something. And that's kind of the approach I've taken to the show. And number two, it's you guys. Like the comments, you guys talking to me, social media, connecting with me. I wish I could thank every single one of you, and I have individually, but not all of you. But thank you for taking time out of your day to hear me rant. If you heard me rant today about Mike Brown and the Knicks, God bless your hearts. But it means the world to me when I'm not doing this in vain. Meaning that if I'm not going to do this show to hear myself talk. I do it because I love it. I love expressing my opinions and hearing from you guys and your thoughts and your opinions. This show is just it's your show too. Not all the way, because I got to pay you guys. But it's your show too. And you drop your questions, drop anything. Ask me, because you guys make the show. You guys do it. When I see people are listening and watching, and when I see the comments and then I hear your guys' feedback, it means the world. There's so much I want to do with this show that I want you guys to stick around for the ride. Because this is, we'll talk about sport. We can talk about life. And sometimes you need that reminder that it's okay not to be okay. My mom, listen, I'm not a robot. She said, you're human. You can have emotion. Because you're a human being. Human beings have emotion. And like I say, when I talk about sports, I dare to have emotion. And But the overriding message is, before I let you all go, is that to say the things that I want to. I want to do trivia. If you guys are interested in trivia, please let me know. Contact me on the socials, @Brown, Twitter, TikTok. I'll drop it all when I release the episode. All the contact information. And, and Craig, I know, Craig. I know. I know, Craig. I listen. See, here's the thing. People are like, oh, you should have been Terminator. No, I want to be the other guy. I want to be Robert Patrick's character. Because that guy was made like, what, the liquid silver, mercury? That's the guy. Like, that's the guy. I'm like, being robot. Let me pour a cup of water on it. All your circuits are gone. But anyway, I appreciate that, Craig. And then John, there, you do a lot for us. You give and give to us. There's okay. Thank you for that, John. Because I give out what you guys give me. And like I said, you guys mean the world. Like I said, I want to do trivia. I'm going to give away stuff. I love trivia, the nerd in me. I love Jeopardy, which I'll be watching in about half an hour or so. I love trivia. I love, and I pass that on to you guys. Give back in some capacity that way. Have some kind of contest. Because you guys help me through the darkest times. You guys were the light in the tunnel. And I want to be the light in the tunnel for you. And I'm letting you know that, hey, if you want someone to talk to you, come in this show. You can have a conversation. We'll talk all the sports and all of that jazz. Then I'll dedicate time in this show, and we can talk. Because sometimes the talk, it benefits us, but it can help the next person too. And I think that's an important thing to kind of to understand, that it's not just for us, but it can help other people too. So, like I say, my goal is to do this every week. And like I say, you guys drop some ideas, some topics you guys want me to talk about. Drop your questions, for my socials. And so, and on that, I guess on that high note, thank you. Listen, thank you for listening. Thank you for taking the time. And folks, that's sports in the world. And until you hear and see me again next time, I'm Ladarius. And one more time before we go, I had to cut my own outro. And I miss talking. Yeah, me and C-Dub, like I said, with that, we're going to get that rocking and rolling probably next week on that. So we'll probably catch up there as well. And listen, we missed you. We missed you guys. And then Craig, you do great work. And let me tell you something about Craig. Let me tell you something about this guy. Craig, if the king of IDP, because I signed up for a quick mini story before we get out of here. I joined God knows how many leagues, sleeper, and I, because we're doing two of the slow drafts, and I didn't know it was IDP. It's like, wait a minute, why are there defensive players on here? I'm like, oh no. And I said, so Craig, my wise man will be hearing from me quite a lot in the upcoming season. Let me tell you something about Craig. Craig is the guy who's always been there and supported me. And I want you guys to support him, support his social, like, and, go follow him. Go follow him on social media. Because he's absolutely brilliant at what he does as well. So Craig, you do great work as well. And friends and future friends, that's sports in the world for today. And until you see and or hear me again next time, I'm Ladarius. Be real, be you, be blessed, and be safe from all of us here from the Sports and the World podcast. One more comment for Greg. Love you, Greg.